Okay. We can just start today's meeting. So, okay, let's start off with the beginning. I know because this week, I was really busy, so I was not able to make any homework for the checkerboard cipher, but I did send out a practice test yesterday. So I didn't expect any of you guys to do the practice test though, because I sent it out pretty late than usual. So it makes sense if you didn't were able to do it. And I didn't get any of the practice test either. And if you did send it, and if you think you sent it, then just email me later. Maybe something was wrong there. So last week we went over the wheel where on week 6 we'll have an in-person test. So we did choose partners last week. If you weren't there, then the partners are on the slide. So don't forget to practice with your partners for the week 6 in-person test. And then working together will help you get faster and more accurate with all the ciphers because on week 6 we're going to have 6 ciphers in total, and then partners were announced last week, so make sure to connect and review before the test. And Baraj, do you have a
Yeah,
question?
I just asked Hemant and he said he's coming like in a couple minutes.
Okay.
At least I think so.
Okay. um yeah, so make sure to practice, and then you guys have your first invitational on November 1st through the 8th, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So make sure to practice. We have a couple of weeks before it, so you guys will know a good amount of ciphers, but it's always good to try to learn some ciphers on your own if you do have extra time. But I think, yeah, we'll learn around 7 ciphers, I think. So you guys will be okay. And then let's go on to. So today we'll be learning how to decode cryptarithms, and then this should take around 7 to 9 minutes, and then it's around the more higher level of medium difficulty because it's around 200 to 500 points. And cryptarithms, it's one of those ciphers that it's hard to understand initially, but once you get it, it's really easy to just keep continuing on. And then mostly there are gonna be addition and subtraction in tests. Sometimes, I believe in state they do give multiplication, division, but yeah, for now you guys will only have addition and subtraction. Mostly, actually, addition will be given in tests, and rarely there is subtraction too. Today we're gonna mainly focus on addition because I noticed that in most of the practice tests there was a lot of addition given. And then often in tests, the cryptarithms are special bonus questions. So special bonus questions, if you didn't know already, they'll give additional points. So they'll usually put a star or write special bonus to the question. They and at the top they'll give a table, and at the top you can see how much extra points they give in special bonus. Special bonus you can get up to even 400 more points than the actual cipher. So in special bonus questions, it would give you a much larger advantage than doing just the normal ones. And then do not solve the entire cipher if not needed. Just fill in the boxes. That might sound confusing now, but just keep that in mind when we're decoding cryptarithms. And then cryptarithms only go from 0 to 9, and you're not supposed to use the same number twice. And then there will be given a big table, so it has like all the given letters, and you need to fill in like the numbers, but you don't need that at all. And then important thing to keep in mind is the first letter cannot be 0 because then it would not even be a number. So that's something to keep in mind. If you guys want like to make your notes, start off with writing this. Um, So write this part in your notes. Over here, just the important part. And then once you're done, put a thumbs up. Okay, let's continue on to the next slide. So first, step number one, write all of this in your notes. So step number one, look at the operation. So usually, like I said, it would be either subtraction or addition. So if you acknowledge the operation, then it will be a lot easier because they are completely different. And then step two, look at the place values to see if we can make a quick generalization. Can we eliminate possible answer choices based on regrouping or properties? And then step three, use an organized list for each letter. So we can have, if we have, for example, A, D, and B, then we can say, what does A equal? And then what does D equal? And then what does B equal? And then step number four, plug in an option to see if it works. If it does not, cross off your list and keep trying. And what I mean by list is what I was saying. So, and then you have blank one or two, and then so on. So that's how the list would look like. Okay, and then once you're done copying down these notes into your notebook, then put a thumbs up. Okay, let's continue on. So first, let's look at patterns. And first, we should look at addition. So something to keep in mind, these patterns you should memorize. It will come as a product of doing the ciphers over and over again, but just keep these in mind. And then these two you should write in your notebooks and then write the examples as well. So like the ciphers, both of them. And then if you do have a different color, then use a different color to show the number values. But if you don't, that's all right. So the number one pattern you guys should remember is that the triangle position. So there will always be a carry over of +1 from the second column. So from over here to here. And then the top number will be 9 and the first bottom number will be 1. So like I said, something that's really important is in all cryptarithms, the number that is in the first column over here, then that will be 1. Like no matter what, that will always be 1. Because if it's not 1, then the whole cryptarithm is wrong. And then the second bottom number will be 0. The second bottom number does not always have to be 0, but it usually is. The second bottom number, it won't be 0 in these type of cases. So over here, when we have S plus S, but in these type of cases, in the triangle position, where the reason why I say a triangle is because it looks like a triangle like this, then the second bottom number would always be 0. And then, so now let's look at our second pattern. Okay, so the first letter will always be 1, and in the second column, S can be as high as possible, even 9 plus 9, which is 18, can work. So this is kind of what I said over here as well. So no matter what over here you have, this can also be 5 plus 5. S can be 5 plus 5. But if we do 5 plus 5, then that would be 10. So there would be 1, right? If we do 9 plus 9, that would be 18, and then we would have 1. Or if we do 7 plus 7, 14, 8 plus 8, 16. No matter what number we put here, then it has to be 1. And the number that we put in as S has to be greater than 4, because if it was 4, then 4 plus 4 is 8, and that wouldn't work. And we know that this number has to always be 1, so this S has to be greater than 4. Okay, and then once you're finished, put a thumbs up. Okay, let's continue on to the next slide. So now we can say that now let's look at the patterns for subtraction. So number 1, the top number has to be 1, because if it was 2, then we would have to have 1 left over in the same column. And this is the same for any other number other than 1. So if we have 1 over here, then when we subtract something like, for example, 10, then 10 minus, I'm not sure, we could say 3 would be 7, but in this case that wouldn't work. I was just showing you guys how it has to be 1, but M and M have to be the same. So just know that the first number in subtraction at the top over here has to be 1 as well. And then the second pattern is if in the same column and you subtract the same letter, the resulting number will always be 0. So I think this is pretty common knowledge already, because if we had 5 over here and 5 over here, 5 minus 5 is 0. If we had 6 or 8 or 9, then the number subtracted by itself is just always 0, but that's something that you should remember and keep in mind. So then it will make solving the cipher a lot easier. And then again, once you're finished writing, keep a thumbs up. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. So now let's actually do some practice. So we can start off with this cipher over here, this subtraction one. So write the cipher and write the notes as we're going through. But we can start off with putting 1 as A. So we know this because remember before we learned why the first letter always has to be 1, because it's just a basic pattern and it wouldn't work if it was any other number than 1. So if we know that A is 1, then 1 minus 1 is 0. So B is 0. So then we can fill that in over here. And then since we know that this whole number is 101, so 101 minus C and then 1, so blank and then 1 equals 10. So then you would just know that C would be 9, because what is 101 minus 10? 91. So then we can just fill in C as 9, and then that would make sense. So kind of cryptarithms, it's kind of like this. It's kind of guessing as you go. You just need to find one solid number, and once you find one solid number, then you just keep going, and it makes sense as you keep going. But usually we won't have cryptarithms this small. They will be a lot bigger, but just to understand for practice, we'll practice with smaller cryptarithms. Okay, so now let's move on to the addition practice. So first, we can start off with putting b as 1 because we're applying our basic patterns knowledge. And this is kind of the same from last time. So now since we know that b is 1, 1 plus 1 equals 2. So a would be 2 because we know we're adding this. And then we get 21 plus blank equals 112. And then in the same case over here, we kind of just have to guess since we know that we just kind of have to use values since we know that it equals 112. Then 112 minus 21 is 9 because we kind of did it backwards. We kind of use subtraction, even though it's addition, we use subtraction to find it. So then C would be 9. And then again, once you're done writing it down, put a thumbs up. Okay, let's move on to the next one. So this one is usually how it's gonna look. The cryptarithms, they will most likely look like this, not as the ones before. And then, so over here we have this values that you need to fill in. So these values you can fill in once you fill in the formula. And remember one thing, you can kind of guess your way through the values to decode. You don't have to have the cryptarithm correct. So as long as you have this part correct, then the formula does not need to be correct. So that's one thing to keep in mind because the test graders will only grade the values to decode and they won't grade the formula. So it's okay if the formula is not correct. And then again, we do not need this table at all. We won't be using that. And they just put it there to as a resource to help, but it doesn't help whatsoever. So you can just no need to use that at all. So just make sure to ignore that. And then let's start off with our basic patterns. So this is addition, right? So we know that m is 1 because of our knowledge from before. And since we know that m is 1, what we would do is now we would just fill it in. So wherever 1 is, we would just put m. And so that's how it would look. And then now we know that I is 0. And the reason we know I is 0 is because if we put 9 as f, there would have to be a carryover of 1 from A and H, right? There would have to be a carryover of 1. And there we can't have a carryover of 2 in cryptarithms, which is one thing to keep in mind. So it would always be a carryover of 1, so that I is 0. And I'm gonna put a dash in the middle so you guys know the difference between O and 0. Yeah, and then what's your question?
Why can there only be a carryover of 1 and not 2?
Because if you think about it, we can only go from 0 to 9, right? So 0 to 9 is 18. You can't go past 9. And how can you get 20 if you can't go past 9?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, do you get it now?
Yeah.
Okay, so now we would just fill in our values. Um, okay, and we know that F is 9 because, like I said, you can't have a carryover of 2. Okay, so I think that's it. And then now what we would do next is let's try to find 5. What would 5 be? Because we know that after M, there has to be a vowel. It can't be a consonant. Because if we keep M, R, and something, then that wouldn't make sense in this case. Maybe it would, but usually after M, we know that it would be a vowel. So our vowel options right now are A and E for not M. For our vowel options are A and E for 5. And we could do I, but we know that I is 0, so I is not work for 5. So let's try 5 as E first. If we try 5 as E first, then we know that an odd number, we can't have T plus T equal an odd number because what would that get to 5? So that does not make sense. So we know that E cannot be 5. So we cross out E. And now that we know 5 equals A, let's fill that in. So A is 5. And then now the next value we can move on to is we should first note that R could be either A or no. Over here, we know that we have to have a carryover of +1. So if we have to have a carryover of +1, H has to be greater than 6. So that's something to keep in mind. Note that for later. And then now let's move on to the next value. So if we know that E, this is E over here. Okay. So then H would be either 7 or 8 because we have to have a carryover. So it has to be greater than 6. And then R can either equal 3 or 2. Right. So now continuing on from that, if we try H as 8 first. So 8 plus 5 and then 3. So that would work. So we can first try off by filling that in and see if that would make sense. And so far it looks like it would make sense. So we would keep continuing on. But if it doesn't make sense as we go on later, then we can X that out and try a different value. So now that we know I is 0, we can try to find E. So, okay. And then one thing, the meeting will end in 10 minutes. So once it's ended, try to rejoin. And since I is 0, the two letters can't be the same. So this column has to have a +1 because it's like if we make an equation out of it, I plus 1 equals A. And we know A is 5. So since we know A is 5, we know that E has to be 4. So if E has to be 4, T can either be 7 or 2. Let's try 7 first. So let's try 2 first. So if T is 2, we don't have a carryover, right? And we have 5, and then 5 plus an N cannot be 1, right? Because if we have 5 plus blank equals what? That wouldn't make sense because our options right now, if we filled in E and then we also have 3 as R and then we have 2 as T. First of all, frets, I don't think that would make sense as any word, and I don't know how it would continue on from T and then on to the next one. So you can also just have logic from that. But if you do try it, we only have 6 and then 7. So if you have 6 over here, 6 plus 5 is 11, and then plus 1 is 2. So that would not make sense at all. So that means that T would have to be 7 in this case. Is this making sense so far for everyone?
Kind of.
No. Viraj, what's your question? Do you have a question?
Not specifically, it's just in general it doesn't make sense. Like I don't get how we got like half of the letters that we did.
Do you get how we got?
Like I get how we got F,
Mm-hmm.
but other than that, I get how we got M, but
Do,
after that's all it doesn't really make that much sense.
okay. Um, let's try to restart. So, do you get how we get I, right?
No.
No. Okay. Just remember that the basic patterns knowledge, if we have a triangle like this, then this number would always be 9, and then this would be 1, and then 0. Because think about it, we only can have a carryover of 1, right? So if we have a carryover of 1, then 9 plus 1 is 0, 10, right? So how
Okay,
could
yeah,
this
that makes
be?
sense.
Yeah, okay.
So
So
if
that's
okay.
keep in mind. And then let's try to go from there. Okay, so it's kind of, you have to make sense of like the cipher at the top two, the decoding values, and figure out whether they're vowels or not. So let's try to fill in after this. So 0 is over here. So we know that 5, this has to be a vowel, right? Does everybody get why this has to be a vowel?
Yeah.
Okay. So if it's a vowel, we have 3 options in this case. We have A, E, or I. And it can't be I. Can anybody tell me why it can't be I?
Because I is 0.
Yeah. So then we would cross that off. So we ignore I.
Why can't it be O or U?
Because we don't have that. We only use the values that were given over here.
Oh, so it's on the table.
Yeah. But over
Okay.
here, this has those values. But if you just want to look at it, it's over there.
So we can basically only unscramble the words in the formula.
Yes.
Oh, well, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah. Okay. And then since we know it can't be I, 5 can either equal A or E? Let's try E first. So we know that T plus T can't equal an odd number. Does everybody get why E cannot equal 5?
Yeah.
Okay, so then we know automatically 5 is A. So then we would write it as A over here. And then just fill it in. Okay. And then now we'll try to, let's next move on to E. So E, for basically this is the equation we do. I plus 1 equals A. And A in this case equals 5, right? So just kind of like a equation you need to solve. And we know that it has to be plus 1 over here because we know that we cannot have a carryover of 2, right? The carryover can only be 1. So then if it was 2, then we could do E equals 3. But since it's only a carryover of 1, E would have to be 4. Does everybody get that? Okay, so since E is 4, then we have 2 options for T. So that would be 7 and 2. The reason why it's 2, can anyone tell me why it could be 2?
Because 2 plus 2 is 4.
Yeah. And then 7 plus 7 is 14, right? So since we can have a carryover of 1, T could be 7 as well. So let's try T as 2 first and see why that doesn't make sense. Okay, so if T is 2, then we have 4 over here, right? And we know that A is 5. So there wouldn't be a carryover at all. And if we fill everything out, the options we have left are 6, 3, and 7, and 8, right? So if we can try first, we know that it can't be 3 because if n was 3 over here, then it wouldn't make sense over here because if n was 3, actually let me not explain 3 first. So let me try putting in the values first. I think that will make more sense. Okay. So actually, yeah, just keep in mind that this has to be either 7 or 2. So, and then let's come back to that later because I think it'll make a lot more sense if we come back to that later. Okay, so now let's try to find what H is. So H, we have 2 options, right? 7 or 8. And the reason we have 7 is because 5 plus 7 is 12, and R can be 3 or 2. So those are the 2 values that would work for R, and then H would be 7 or 8. So let's try putting 7 first. If we get 7, then we get 2 over here. And in this case, does anybody get why R cannot be 2? Or should I explain that a little bit more? Anybody? Do you guys get why R is 2? Cannot be 2?
Can you explain a little more?
Yeah. Okay. So if we think 7 and 2, and we know that T can be either 7 or 2, right? And if we have H as 7 and R as 2, then it wouldn't make sense because then we would be canceling out both values. So then that means that